I'm kind of happy that I wasn't told that we would follow a fashion show, because then I would have stressed about finding appropriate clothes in my wardrobe. So I ended up with my Global Fashion Summit suit I've carried a few times. I'm going to tee this up a little bit. When I started out in sustainability consulting about 25 years ago, sustainability was couched in lots of words. And the case for sustainability was made mostly on principles and values and feelings. And the business side often responded to that by saying, that makes sense, but I don't know really what it means to me. And it remained like that for quite a while. To me, a big change came with what is called the Stern Report. That was the first authoritative, comprehensive assessment of the cost of climate change and the cost of inaction and the benefits of action. That came in 2005. It took 10 years to get to the Paris Agreement, but I'm quite sure that we wouldn't have had a Paris Agreement without the momentum created by the Stern Report and the focus on how do we translate the impacts of climate change into financial. How do you create a common language that we understand as politicians, civil servants, business leaders, civil society leaders, etc. I think some of the same is happening in the corporate sector now, and it has been underway for a while, but there is an acceleration now. And we need to understand that sustainability impacts are not born equal. We need to understand what they mean to our businesses. We need to be able to prioritize. And in order to prioritize, or as a consequence of prioritize, we also need to action. And I think that's really what we want to get closer to today, is really what's the role of finance? What's the role of the financial language and the finance function in actioning the agendas that we care about? And we are launching today the GFA together with Boston Consulting Group. We're launching a new report. It's called the CFO Fashion Agenda. It is in the vein of the CEO Fashion Agenda that many of you will know. So it's being launched today. I encourage you to go online, download it, read it. It's really good. It has lots of great insights. And we'll hear a little bit more about that particular report and what the key messages are. To guide me in this conversation, I have four extraordinary persons with me here. So one is Caterina Martinez Prado, who is on my left, first person, who's managing director and partner at Boston Consulting Group and who has been leading the report that was up there just a second ago. Then I have Laurence Barrère, who is Sustainable Finance Director at Kering, who comes with a background as CFO at the brand level and has an intimate understanding of how that role plays out in practice. And I think that Laurence's title embodies what we're talking about. It has sustainable and finance in the same title. And then we have Ulrike Leverenz from H&M Group. Ulrike is Head of Green Investment, and in many ways also embodies the change that we see now where finance and sustainability is getting much closer to each other than maybe what they used to be. And finally, we have Dorte Rye Olsen at the very far left, who is Head of Sustainability at Bestseller, and is one of those people who obviously have worked very closely with the finance functions over the past many years in her role as Head of Sustainability. So thank you to you for joining us today and to share your thoughts. Let's start with the CFO Fashion Agenda. Caterina, what are the key messages of that report and why do we see it coming out now?
Yeah, the starting point for that was really something that we observe, and I think many people in this room will observe. The consequences, the financial consequences of sustainability are really intensifying. Costs are rising, regulations are tightening, raw material volatility is increasing, but at the very same time, executive attention is kind of slipping away. As just one example, if you look at earnings calls for the last 4 or 5 years, you see that the mentioning of sustainability has just decreased by over a third. And that gap is something that we really are exploring in the report through the lens of a CFO and the financial teams. A lot of the financial leaders say sustainability is extremely critical, but they don't have really embedded it into their financial processes and day-to-day yet. And so the report is really trying to unpack that and find very practical solutions for CFOs and the teams to provide a roadmap and some of the tools to really think sustainability through from controlling, from planning, from capital allocation. not just to make it a compliance exercise, but really something that helps building the resilience we are talking about.
Yeah. So it is this conundrum on the one hand that sustainability is seen as being financially more material to many businesses today, and on the other hand, we see that it's actually dropping down the agendas of the CFOs. And that is one of the urgencies that we're seeking to address with this particular report and the work. Laurence, you, in many ways, at Caring, saw the need to integrate the two worlds of finance and sustainability already back in 2012, when you created the environmental profit and loss account methodology. And that has stayed with you, but you have obviously, as Caring, evolved your approach beyond that. Do you want to share how that has evolved and what is the change you're beginning to see now?
Yeah, thank you, Peter, for this question. Yes, I would say EPNL at Caring was a fantastic starting point. I remind the spirit when we launched it. The concept was basically what will be the invoice the planet can give to you for the usage of the natural resources, of the ecosystemic mechanism. So what will be the bill for the society of the caring externalities of our environmental impact? And I would say it was fantastic to measure first, because we are thinking that we can act really on what we measure in detail. So that was the starting point. We map all the value chain step by step, from raw material production to finished product, and we decide to monetize using simply the euro value. So just to precise that the EPNL is not in the PNL, is not a cost, it's not a liability, but is the representation of these externalities. And I would say that it has been very beneficial for the change, because we are talking a common language. We are using euro. And when we go to the studio, when you go to the R&D, to the product development team, and you say, guys, I would like to improve your EPNL footprint. This product is 100 euro net impact, so meaning all the impact, GHG, water, pollution, waste, and you should go to 85. So what are your action plans? So it was really a very nice catalyzer, I would say, in terms of a very quick understanding of the impact for the team. So the team are looking new materials, new sourcing countries, new processes, and each time we can deliver to them the result. Okay, you improve by 10, you improve by 5, and you follow what we call our caring standards, that are our big guidance in terms of sustainable practices. So it has been a real change. So that was 10 years ago. With this tool, we set up a very nice ambition that was to decrease by minus 40% the intensity, meaning the impact at product level that we reached 3 years before. And then we evolve. Now we are talking much more to decrease in absolute value, impact by impact, GHG, water, pollution, waste, and not in a net approach. And this EPNL provides us the valuation of the internal price of carbon that we are using today in the valuation of green investments. So we are moving, we are digitalized. All of the houses are equipped now of this tool. They can monitor at their level with a SaaS solution. So it's a real game changer.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating that the way to, I guess, normalize the language of sustainability into a language that allows for decision making in other critical parts of the business. Dorte, you have been in that sort of intersection with finance for many years. What are you beginning to see changing now, and what really needs to change?
Yeah, well, a very clear shift from sustainability sitting at the side of the business, moving into the core. Of course, getting closer to finance, fully understanding the business language and the finance language and linking the two, but also getting finance closer to sustainability we've actually seen that. It also takes something from the other side to move in and understand the language of sustainability. So what are we actually measuring on? What's short-term value? What's long-term value? So it's kind of that intersection. And of course, we talk about the CFO here. For me, it's much broader than the CFO. It's financial allocation, it's business strategy, it's embedding it. So definitely seeing that accelerate also. And we are starting to have the right conversation in a business language.
Yeah. So I think you can hear there's a lot about language in this conversation, and I think that is important to just to keep in mind that this is very much about allowing us to talk on the same terms and then make decisions on the same assumptions, etc. Ulrika, you have been leading with E&Y and the Apparel Institute of Impact, etc., a report on how do we accelerate decarbonization. And that has a very specific finance angle to it. And it complements the agenda that the CFO Fashion Agenda that Katarina has been leading. What's the take on that report? What are your sort of main call-outs?
Let me take up on something you said first when you started talking about how we started to look into sustainability. But I think what we all are saying here now is that we want to talk about how to reframe sustainability into being enterprise risk management, and that we need to incorporate the financial investment into that decision process. That means that our CFOs more or less go from being a scorekeeper of financial value to actually to be an architect of long-term value. And I think this is what makes the white paper complement your report in a very good way, where the GFA report, which you must read, it's good, talks a lot about the why and the what. And with our white paper, we are trying to give a guidance on the how. We're more specific, looking into an area where we know that we have a possibility of having a lot of impact as a brand, but where we also need to do it together, which is decarbonization, scope 3. And very short about that guidance, and coming back to what you said, and also with the language, it's a lot about how to reframe that value, to look into a business case where you need to look at the cost of inaction. That means, what is the risk or financial risk that I as an enterprise will have if I do not act? Then deduct the cost of decarbonization. And if the cost of inaction is higher, it's math, than the cost of decarbonization, there is your value. And then the decisions could be straightforward. Now, we also know that we do live in a world with short-term profit expectation, and I think we need to acknowledge that, and that there's very likely that you will have friction in your organization. But you can bridge that, or you have a gap, you can bridge that with a sustainability investment framework, where you make sure that you ring-fence capital that works long-term. And as Laurent said, you need to have a way of reporting and analyze these kind of investment in another way, where you have KPIs which link financial value to impact, such as cost per ton or the value that you talked about. And this is how you then can integrate sustainability into operations.
Yeah, and I think integration is the key word here. And so if we sort of turn to that aspect, because I think in sustainability, we've often, if you come from the sustainability side, you may have often felt that you were a bit on the outside, you were an add-on. And now what we're really talking about is not only getting into sustainability into the business, but getting the business into sustainability. So it's really a two-way street. So Laurence, you already spoke a bit about how you do this on a daily basis. Do you want to share a few more details on how do you work with sustainable finance, essentially?
Yeah. So yes, so we are working, we are sustainable finance. I'm leading this new function. And before I would like to talk about change management, because 3 years ago, we decide effectively to create a new function and to work much more closer between sustainability and finance. So at the beginning, we decide very quickly. So no need to put one guy in finance, in sustainability. We didn't want to separate KPIs and action or action without KPIs. So we have decided to create a small team and to incube, to do this role of change maker, like an incubator, in order to create this new area of green finance. So we create this team with mixed competencies. So I insist about that because we can talk about climate trajectory, technical aspect of climate, but we can talk also financing, fund, OPEX, CAPEX, and cost. So my team has a mix of climate engineer and business analyst, and we are leading this new area, both with sustainability and both with finance. So that is the starting point of this organization, and I would say it's working very well. Because 3 years after, we have a green finance function in all of the house. We have provided models on the same way, same calculation. We have installed a business review 3 times a year with all the CODIR of the house, aligned with the financial calendar. That is very important. It's not an isolated topic. It's completely integrated into the management cycle. And when we have the CODIR, we are not talking only sustainability, because thanks to the EPNL that we talked before, we were able to map our priorities. And as we are fashion, as we are retailers first, the volume is key in our trajectory. For sure, we can talk carbon intensity, all the action, new materials, logistics, new ways of working, processes, circularity. But as fashion, as retailers, we need to focus as well on our volume, on the sales through, on the stock optimization. And during this business review, around the table, we have CFO, we have merchandising, we have operation, we have sustainability, and we are talking the same languages. What are the volume by collection produced, the volume sold, the sales through, what is your mix, newness, carryover, what are your stock on hand? And I would say it's working because we are talking the same languages. We are not talking only technical aspect of climate. No, we are talking business languages. And when I create this function also, I took the good example we have in finance. So we are monitoring, like we are monitoring a business plan. So what is a climate trajectory? It is our business plan. With a different timeline than in finance. Finance is working on 3-5 years. We are working until midterm, 2033, 2035. But it's exactly the same mindset. We have a plan. We know our priorities. We know where our impacts are. We have action plan. We have targets on each action plan to reach in 2033 and 2035. And during these 3 business reviews a year, align with financial cycle, align with initial budget, reforecast 1, reforecast 2. So we adjust the volume and the trend of the business. So we are reviewing where we are in terms of progress towards this action plan with a key KPI we have selected. So not so much, few, but very clear. And when we take one KPI, it is exactly like in finance we are doing. It is one definition and the same year after year. We don't change. So we apply exactly the same principles, and I would say it's working a lot. Same for budget allocation. In my team, we are reviewing all the green CAPEX, and we have set up a carbon fee, an internal carbon fee. And at the beginning, at the early beginning of the budget phase, we allocate a carbon fee to each of our team. And they shoot back to us with a dedicated project they have in mind. On green finance activity, we are reviewing, we are calculating a ROI integrated, meaning not only with a pure financial ROI, but with taking into account the internal price of carbon. And we are demonstrating that each project has a positive impact. And honestly, when you are looking in detail, you find very quickly a positive impact. And you can demonstrate that sustainability is not opposed to profitability. And then after, we give the green light to the house, and this budget is allocated, is arbitrated like any other project in the management discussion.
Fantastic, and I think that's a good message to end with there, that do not assume that once finance gets involved, it means that the business case is disproven. It may actually be the very opposite, and it makes it a more compelling case. So thank you for sharing that. Ulrika, what does finance integration look like at H&M?
To start with, for the CFOs, if there are any out there, try to treat these investments as any other investment strategic decision, because it's long-term, yes, but so are many other decisions. And ask to be involved in the criteria setting of sustainable investments. And if you're new, this feels like a new field for you, I will also say, don't worry, because there are platforms for this already. You don't need to start from scratch. If I can give just an example, I mean, you have the GFA report now, which gives a lot of guidance as well. But the Fashion Pact is now convening discussions for CFOs on decarbonization and how to work on joint action. Then for the CSOs, I'm repeating myself a little bit of what we said, but it's very much about reframing the language. Sustainability cannot be aspirational. It has a value, and we need to speak the financial language of the financial backers. Having said that, when you look at the investment and how to integrate these, the first step is the discussion, the internal discussions that you're involved, and that you also can talk about it on financial metrics. Then obviously all financial or sustainable investments are different. There are some that fit the normal process quite well, like investments in material or a resale platform like Selfie for H&M. But there are also other ones like decarbonization that has more challenge and where we need to find another way to invest. And I think this is what we need to talk about, because here we work in a fragmented supply chain. That means we all share suppliers, but that also means that any individual investment, it's not as efficient and it's very hard to scale. And this is also why H&M some years ago initiated Future Supply Initiative, which is a blended finance tool, looking at Data now, because Bessel is with us here, where brands that share supply go together and financially support their suppliers in decarbonization projects. It's convened and supported by NGOs that help us align on solutions, for instance. And yes, it takes time to work together. I don't know if this is an English saying. Someone said, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you're going to go far, go together. Mm-hmm. And I think this is what we need to know. But I can also say that the first findings from this, and as being a CFO myself, I obviously think this is very nice. It's very cost efficient. We see that the cost per ton is more than half of what we reach when we do it on our own, even more. So it is the way to scale, and it is cost efficient. So the business case fits.
And I think that's an interesting point. I imagine if you were from a finance function, you're not really used to thinking in terms of, well, if we work with others, we can reduce cost even more. We would more think about what is it we can do in our business. And maybe this is where the partnership between finance and sustainability becomes a real unlock for addressing some of the challenges that we have spoken about for so many years, decarbonization of the upstream value chain. So I think that's really, I think that's a super interesting message, and it's somehow counterintuitive to how people think about finance.
Yeah, and also, I mean, we are fashion retailers. We don't need to be experts in what battery solution should be or what boiler should be used. So we need to work together with NGOs and trying to align on solution. Otherwise, it also will be very complicated for the supplier to actually perform these investments.
So, sort of in that line, Dorte, what's your thinking on the part about integration and working with others?
Yeah, I think we need to work at both levels, right? What we saw a couple of years back is, I mean, we're definitely not a heavy governed company. It doesn't run in our veins, so to speak. But we needed to set up a forum, a business forum, to discuss our ambitions and how to execute. And it was a combination of sustainability, it was finance, it is business leaders within our company, along with sourcing, crucial in this discussion, where we discussed, okay, if we want to go here, how do we actually get there? And so it's also a knowledge building forum, because the data set in sustainability it's not as direct and clear as in the finance language. It's much more mature, right? So how do you talk about this and prioritize, but also how do you make clear what you stop doing, which does not make business sense from a financial perspective or from a material aspect, from a sustainability angle. So we meet every quarter. It's facilitated by us and led by our CEO. It's a good forum to decide on where to focus, where to move the needle. And for instance, we have a target that we want to place 75% of our orders with suppliers that are highly rated within sustainability. So having that discussion in the room, what does that actually mean? And how do you make the business accountable for actually delivering on that target?
Yeah.
It becomes business intelligence and performance. We also decided to put KPIs into our integrated report, monthly reporting, financial reporting. And we actually decided to put them up front as the first page, because we wanted to put some attention on, it was in a simplistic way and the version 1.0 for sure, but it was some of our key targets. So it was right there in front of every finance leader every month. How far are we? Where are we lacking behind? And we kind of love internal competition, so it also gave a little bit of an edge to that. So it needs to be embedded. So that level, and then yes, at the industry level, we will definitely need to go beyond our own company. It is inefficient to do it, also financially inefficient. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And we've just got a few more minutes left, and I want to give the word to Katarina now to sort of help us see what is the role of not just the CFO, but like more the finance function in managing sustainability. And you've already heard some great examples here of how some businesses are going about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think beyond the, let's say, purely day-to-day, I think the most important role of the CFO and the teams is really that element of prioritization. And when I say prioritization, I don't mean, just, signing off some requests and not signing off others, but really being this partner in the decision-making process, especially, and often so, trade-offs are unavoidable. And I think when we look into what really hinders sustainability going forward, it's the number one reason is short-term budget pressures and reprioritization.
Yeah.
And then sometimes not because the right people are on the table, or sometimes because it's a need, but it's really a blocker. And the CFO is one of the stakeholders who really gets to say what are we doing and what are we not doing, and what really gets done by just making some of those decisions. And therefore is a super important stakeholder. And I think what we see is from the 150 companies that we have looked at and interviewed, when it's done well, there is really like this common capabilities between finance and sustainability. It goes back to the language that was mentioned, but it's also really bringing the discussion on this level playing field, looking at sustainability really as one of those initiatives like any other and make it compete for the same financing. Of course, criteria are sometimes different, but I think leveling the playing field internally is a key aspect, and then doing the same externally. A lot of the external stakeholders are in the end financial stakeholders, especially about when we think about the big investments. And the CFO speaks the language, and the CFO can really help shaping conditions, because sometimes the investments are too small, sometimes the time horizon is too long. But that can really be a very important stakeholder in making it happen and shaping it for one company, but then also for many together.
And I think it's that sort of what you're stressing is really that this is a partnership, whereas I think perhaps some people in sustainability sort of looking at finance and saying, these are the people who always turn the thumb down to my requests. As you kind of said, signing off in budget. No, you're not getting the budget you would want to have, or you're getting a pilot budget. But that's not really the message that's coming out here, right? The message much more one about integration into the business for the benefit of also sustainability, if you want. It's also about finance actually playing a crucial role in facilitating the collaboration that sustainability is really good at doing, but often has been, let's say, not as effective in getting collaboration into action, collective action, if you want. And I think that was one of the key things that I think Ulrika stressed really nicely, was that actually what we're able to demonstrate is that by working together, we lower the cost of action, not just with removing certain barriers, but we can actually show a very, very different business case. And plus, I think the financial toolbox is also very interesting, that it's not just about own capital, it's also about blended finance, and blended finance is bringing in capital that's from banks, but also from development banks and from foundations and others. So there are different ways of bringing capital to the table and seed and finance the change that we want to see. So that nexus partnership between finance and sustainability, for me, is one of the unlocks for building more resilient businesses for the future. So thank you for listening in. When you have a moment, go to the GFA or the Boston Consulting Group website and take a look at the CFO agenda. Download it, don't print it, download it, read it, and be smarter, and let's make our business more resilient. Thank you so much for listening in, and thank you for my 4 speakers.